We have made it to the philosophical classroom. I did a little switcheroo over there for you, for all of those millions of people who were watching on Thursday waiting for the philosophical classroom. I did a switcheroo over there and cross my fingers about those millions of people. That's what I'm crossing my fingers about. Hopefully we're all moving in the right direction. But one of the things I did, see? Pepsi, I expected you to help clear my throat, and you didn't. That's why I drink you. Hold on, I gotta get my water. Take a look at the new slide I added. If you noticed, on the agenda there, I have got a new title for this, not for this class, it's the philosophical classroom, but our topic. Because we were groupthink, the making of sheeple, right? I do have to get my water. Yeah, maybe it worked. We'll see. So now we're talking about, I want to give us a framework for today, what we're gonna talk about today, and how we're continuing. I looked through these slides. I'm telling you, there's some good stuff ahead, and the magic is in bringing these things together. So we know that we are talking about groupthink, and we know that another title that some people can really relate to is the making of sheeple, and this literally is the science behind that making of sheeple. But the people who are talking, it's so the irony of the whole thing, right? There's just the irony of this whole entire realistic view of what is going on, right? And the pointing the finger at the behavior, it's all psychological. It's like, it's mind-blowing. Pointing that's projection is what that's called, right? We just have all of these, as I've said before, and I could see all of these psychological theories actually being tested, really truly being tested. And in particular, well, not in particular behaviorism, I see behaviorism being tested, those ideas, but also Freudian theory, and in particular those defense mechanisms I see. And so, as we always talk about investigation, if you're interested in psychology, take a look at right now what we're seeing is, in this nationalism, we're seeing a lot of projection is what we're seeing. So take a look at that. There's another one too. I'm not sure if I'm going to get to it, or in my mind, if I'm going to be able to think of it. But so, okay, so here we have nationalism. And again, the irony, the projection about this is that the nationalists are calling everybody else sheeples, when in fact, nationalists, you are the perfect example of sheeples. I've talked about this in my 2-minute shorts. I have, these really are written for adults. My 2-minute shorts are written for adults. It doesn't mean that younger people can't understand them. It just means that my intention is that adults will be watching those. The same thing with the mystery series as well. Doesn't mean that younger people can't watch them. It just means that when I did them, and the live versions of my shorts, it is with the intention that adults are watching them, all right? Doesn't mean you can't understand it, all right? So I've talked about this, and you could see how, because I focus on some of the behaviors and some of the really ugly behaviors of nationalists. Why? Because they're ugly behaviors, and I'm a psychologist who's also an activist as well. And so I don't want to see those behaviors, period. The end. I don't want to see those behaviors. And I will do everything I can to stomp out that behavior, because what it is hate, is what it is. And as a Christian, that's what we do. We stomp out hate. So I do it as a teacher, as a Christian. I say as a woman, as a psychologist, and as a, what else am I? Mother, and as a mother. And yeah, we won't even go into a hierarchy with that because it just is so debatable. It's an endless debate. But for this nationalism, let me put up a definition while I get my water. All right. And then you can go look up other words and do. I do like the term deep dive, so do a deeper dive into some of these other things that we're talking about as well. But let me nationalism, irony, the irony in this, defense mechanisms, projection. So some things that you might want to write down if you're interested in these kinds of things. And from a political perspective, it's nationalism. Well, I said I was going to put that up, and I didn't put it up, so I'm going to leave it up, and I'm going to start talking from this chalkboard slide here. Nationalism is the identification with one's own nation and support for its interests, especially to the exclusion or detriment of the interests of other nations. And then I put down there a little comment there, which is political ideology has an entirely different definition. All right, let's start with the definition and talk about that, and then we'll go. Hopefully I won't lose that thought of the asterisk over there that I have to still get to, which doesn't have an asterisk, but the small print there implies an asterisk, implies there's something else here going on that I also want us to pay attention to. And I put a note there for it. All right. The asterisk implies there's something else going on here that I want to talk about. And this is my note to remind me to do that. All right. All right. So here we have, let me pull it up here on my screen so I could see it. So here, identification with one's own nation. Of course, we see that, right? Of course, we see that. So nationalists, there is just no denying or whatever is the example for whatever purpose the example is. But January 6th was a perfect example of nationalists. It was people who identified with their nation, right? Yeah, I would have to say strongly, right, with the American flag all over the place, and even in the military gear, right? So this is identifying with their nation, but see how they're identifying with it. So in these strong-armed ways, right? So militaristic, right? A militaristic way, which is. If you look at my other videos again, right-winged authoritarianism, which has been studied since the 1980s, and that's exactly what we're seeing. So this rise in authoritarianism, which we knew was coming since the 1980s, and my guess is that we're trying to figure out what to do about it, which would be, or have been psychologically, some people have been psychologically trying to figure out what to do about it. And clearly, or how to take advantage of it, right? And clearly it is in this exclusion part of it, right? Excluding to the detriment of the interests of other nations. All right. And so nationalists, because we are talking about nations, but really we've got all kinds of hierarchies in there, right? We can see January 6th. Again, I don't think I said that specifically. So, same group, different flags, whatever, or colors, or whatever you want to say, but same group. January 6th is white supremacists, right? So you're talking about the same group of people that have an interest in the nation that also forces it on others. So to the exclusion of others, forces that interest on others to their detriment. Because why? Because they believe that their interests are the interests of the nation, and therefore they should be everybody's interests. Whether or not you believe that is inconsequential. Okay? And that also, we were talking about this in the Bookless classroom. That is federalism. And if you want to go down a different road relative to American history, take a look at Andrew Jackson in Georgia. It's coming up in the I have the books over here. The Trail of Tears book. It's coming up. We're gonna see. It's not gonna. If it's going to come up on the Oregon Trail. We're reading the Oregon Trail because we're talking about in our Bookless classroom how we settled the West and how we came to this, as we have said here in the classroom on last Wednesday. Really a huge thesis across the board here is, for our lives, the huge thesis is this, what we would call an incongruity, right? So it's a mismatch between the ideas, very idealistic about who we are as people. No matter what nation we come from, we all have these idealistic ideas about ourselves. They're just right into our makeup. It is our element of survival, right? Okay, so started going down that road. So what is the thesis? There we go. So what is the thesis then across the board? We're talking about, again, Edmund Morgan's book, American Slavery, American Freedom. Look at that. I got it memorized. Whoop, didn't even have to look back. Over there, it's a blue book if you want to see it over there, though. You can see American in the script writing over there. And so by Morgan, and again, we were talking about across the board, all of these things about people keeping their word and whether or not, right, if there's a hierarchy, right, spiritual classroom, does the sun rise and set on the the rich as well as the poor, the good as well as the evil? So if that's the case, then there isn't this hierarchy that makes you think that you are more deserving. That is this concept of nationalism, right? That's this concept of nationalism. So what I started to say is, and so federalism, we were talking about federalism. We're going to go in more to federalism in our Bookless classroom, and what that means about these concepts of nature versus nurture, and the rights that some people have over over others, which matches this nationalistic ideology, this nationalism, this nationalistic kind of thinking, that rah, this nation. That's nationalism. And it is equivalent with white supremacy. Why? Because it's keeping the status quo is what it is. And the status quo across the planet has been, even Sean Penn talked about it even in Ukraine, that he spent his whole life trying to help people in Haiti, for example, or his adult life, a lot of it. And people want to help people that look like you. And that's true. And it is true. So it is across the nations that we were more willing to help Ukraine than we were other people, right? And there are, as we said, the sun rises and sets on the good as well as the evil, which and that means that there are good as well as evil every place. And to suggest that one nation, philosophically, and spiritually speaking, we are talking about to suggest that one nation, regardless of people, right? One nation, regardless of the individuals, is either inherently good or bad. Remember, we were talking about essentialism and what was the other one? Somebody think of it and say it. Entitativity, right? So this nationalism that we're talking about rolls into this entitativity, the perception. Here, I'm going to open it up and then you don't have to see, the lights in my glasses. You can see what you want to see, which is the definition. Entitativity, the perception of oneness, that individuals grouped together physically or psychologically are part of a group. So the Americans are all part of a group, right? And because of that, we have the same essence, the belief that all things have a basic nature. But what is our basic nature? Well, of course, our basic nature is exactly what it should be, which is what we describe as what is winning right now, right? What's winning? White, right? And and not really white women either. Clearly, if we can't even get a white woman into, as a president, clearly white women aren't winning at all. Take a look at the woman who got in there and how badly she was characterized. Whether or not it's true, look at how badly she was characterized, the white woman. So don't think for a minute that the white woman has some kind of advantage relative to the advantage that white men have, right? Certainly we have a much more colorful Congress. I don't know about Senate though. How about the Senate? Because we have the White House, right? And then we have the Senate. I don't know. Both make up Congress. I don't know. Somebody do an investigation on that, right? And so this is about, again, what do you want to investigate? So I started to say too, Andrew Jackson in our book and federalism and Georgia. Georgia seems, since Andrew Jackson's day, who was like what? I can't remember the president, where he lines up in the presidency. Was he the 15th or 14th? Or the 6th or the 8th? See, I don't even have it right. But he was before Lincoln is what he was before. So he was before Lincoln. And with the colonies and the settlement, I don't know. I'm not sure. But again, we might be doing corrections on Fridays because I like that idea. I really like that idea. So you can put your comments down there and tell me what is wrong with what I said, what you believe, and keep the nastiness aside. We don't need to see that, right? We're learning. This is a classroom. I'm your teacher. Be respectful, for Pete's sake. My gosh. Okay. And all right, so let's get to that bottom comment that I have there, which I just can't get away from either, which is political ideology. Now, political ideology was a link in that came up in my Google. So when I Googled nationalism, this was the dictionary definition that was given in Google. So Google dictionary, whatever dictionary that is. It's not Encyclopedia Britannica. It is dictionary definition. I liked it. It made sense to me. I copied and pasted it. I didn't put the nationalism in that nice lime green like I should have, but we get the picture. So when it came up, when I did that search, political ideology was a link, and there was a definition that came up. Now, the definition, I honestly wouldn't care to repeat because it's just was, the point of it is, why would I repeat a nonsense definition? The point of it is, it was such a nonsense definition. And it was political jargon is what the definition was. It was literally political jargon about what nationalism is. If you read it, you can't make sense of that first sentence. And this is what I'm talking about. There is an element of our minds that skips over information that we don't understand. If we know that A gets us to C, We might skip over B. Why do we need B? We don't know that we need B. If I can get faster, if I have to get to C, shouldn't I just get to C? But what we're doing is we're sort of missing the words. The mechanism by which we get, which I talk about all the time, the mechanism by which we get from A to C. We miss that all the time. And that typically has to do with behavior is what it does. It typically has to do with behaviors and consequences of behaviors. We can philosophize about that all day and all night, likely. I mean, because there are thoughts that go there as well, which is something I'm going to talk about as we get going here a little bit more. So, where was I with this whole thing? So, political, there we go. So, the idea here, and why I put that up there, was that, first of all, you can't make any sense of that first sentence. I don't even want to repeat it because I don't want to get some jargon into your head that you're repeating like a puppet. So that to me is what this is, a system, and I keep doing the triangle thing because there's, with my fingers, that's a triangle, because at the top of that triangle, there's the hierarchy is what they keep going to. And if I could get the bottom part of this hierarchy to be blubbering idiots, to say something stupid, like a definition of nationalism as something even more ridiculous, end with a period, something. That is as much sense as that first sentence made. And so to me, this is how much can we get, it's just like I said, it's a psychological experiment. How much can we get people just to think like it bullshit, like their name, like their brain is cottage cheese. How could we get people to think as if their brain was cottage cheese, right? I don't think it's easy. I think, that's why those people, the irony is that's why those people were climbing on January 6th on the Capitol building, right? Yeah, because they don't want their brain to be cheese. It's the same desire across the board, exhibited in different ways, right? I don't know. I don't know the entire experiment because I didn't devise the methods. I am not that diabolical, despite what others have said about me. Okay, now, the other thing that I wanted to bring up here is this. So, to the exclusion and detriment of others. So we begin to see this important fact that we know psychologically, and we can understand it philosophically. The nature of the human being is to have groups. It is our nature. I want to explain the degree to which that is our nature because I think it's important. It is so much to our nature that, look up the Robbers Cave experiment. We might talk about it sometime. Probably we will. Look up the Robbers Cave experiment to see how much our nature versus nurture, how much our nature actually does group. Very natural thing. So therefore we know survival. We have to group. And so this is the diabolicalness of getting us to blend genders together, is that when we do it, we lose an instinctual sense to procreate, folks, to do the thing we want to do more than anything, have sex, unless you're married for 10 years, and nobody stays married for that long anyway. So you should be enjoying your sex for 10 years minimum. And when we get this new system of things, haha, big middle finger to all of you. When we get this new system of things, we will see that there is we're going to see that gender thing, aren't we? We're going to see how that gender thing plays out. In the spiritual world, there is no male, there is no female. We have to see how that's going to play out, right? Yeah. Those, manipulative, try not to say some of the words. I erased the whole chalkboard because there were all of them I couldn't say. Okay, so we are driven by this natural means to group. Here's another study. All they did, the most basic way that I can group, I could group people, according to all kinds of things. Do you like art? Do you play sports? Are you smart? Right? I could group people on all kinds of things, right? You're a sharer, you're not a sharer. I can group people on all kinds of things. What would be the most basic way that I could group individuals? What would be the most basic way to group individuals? It would be just a name. Just a name without a meaning. Like color has meaning, right? Blue has a meaning, and it's different than red, right? So just an A and a B, just a 1 and a 2. People don't really have feelings for one more than 2, unless you're like 1, 2, whatever, right? So A and B. Do you like A more than B? I don't know. Probably I do, but I like to write a B more than I ever like to write an A. A is, starts the letter of my first name, so I might. So there might be reasons why, but just to say, how about you on this side, you on that side? How about that? We don't care about the side, right? We're all in the same classroom, whatever. How about that? We group people. You've heard the studies, right? Blue eyes, brown eyes, whatever. But that's got stuff attached to it. We don't want anything attached to it. We want just the most basic groups. Will you act like groups if you have no emotion attached to why you're groups? And we can easily do that in a classroom. And we can easily say, you guys here, you guys there. All right? And that's it. Right away, they start getting group mentality. Right away. So we like our group better, right? They start getting colors to represent their group, right? T-shirts. Think about your sports teams. What's the first thing? Even your own home sports team. What do? Like, what I mean by that is if you play, you're a soccer mom and you literally play soccer, right? Or your kids do. What's the very first thing they do? They get their colors is what they do. So we begin seeing this group-minded behavior right away. What does that mean? It means it is written in our DNA. What does that mean? It means it's necessary for survival. That's what it means, right? We are creatures who want to survive. All kinds of concepts, spiritual concepts. We are creatures who want to survive in all different ways, right? Physically, we want to survive. Mentally, we want to survive. Spiritually, we want to survive, which to me is tied in our emotions, right? I don't know, do we emotionally want to survive? Well, we want a legacy, don't we? So yeah, emotionally we want to survive. We want a legacy. We want our children to be prosperous, right? So yeah, we want to survive. So we are creatures who are built to survive. So groupings, right? Grouping, when we group, this is a very natural mechanism. It's written in our DNA. We do it right away. But what do we group right away? What do we actually group right away? Like day one. If groups are so instinctual, if they're written in our DNA, what do I group on day one? Think about it. I'll give you a second. What do we group on day one? What do we know on day one? What do we group? What are you thinking? Put some of those comments down there. What are you thinking that we group on day one? Well, we start grouping light and dark. I'm thinking actually out loud because I didn't even think about that one. That's why I said it first, because I thought I might forget it because I just thought of it for the first time. We might group light and dark right away because I know the one psychologically, right, that I'm thinking of that we group right away. So light and dark, we probably do. Because I was thinking colors, but no, we don't know colors, but we do know light and dark on day. So that is written in our DNA, light and dark. Okay, that's good. Said I'm going to get the cat study up here too, right? With the eyes. The cat with the eyes, yeah. Does that explain it to you? Okay. What else do we group in infancy right away? Our moms. Our moms. And how so? We're not saying mama. We could barely see. It's all blurry. So how do we know our mother? Right? And we're not grouping our mother and a father or a brother from another child, or a mother from another child, right? No. The mother from the rest of the world. That's the group. That's the group. How do we do it? How do we do it? Scent. Her breast milk. Yeah, the scent of her breast milk, right? How about that? And as I have, if you've ever heard me in my classrooms, as I've always said, the best thing that a mother, to me, the infant, one of the most, like, I don't want to say tingly because people just like get all in their like weirdo stage, but whatever, tingly feeling that I ever had, that I had early on, that just the warm, fuzzy feeling that I had. And it should be tingly because there are certain physical changes that come with tingling, right? There are physical changes that come with feeling warm and cuddling towards your child. What comes with that? Well, warmth. Warmth comes with that. And a coziness comes with that, which is a different feeling than tingling, isn't it? And what does tingling do? Well, think about it. What does tingling do? We know what tingling does. And that also gets us ready for breastfeeding, doesn't it? Right? I know. This feeling, la, 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 la. I thought this was supposed to be philosophy. I know it is. Nature versus nurture. Didn't we start talking about that in one of these classes a couple days ago? We did. I don't know if it was in this one. Could have been our spiritual classroom, though. Catch it, though, because there's a great big long introduction about how these scientific questions all boil, and philosophical questions always boil down to the same thing. They always boil down to the same thing. I'm going to say it a third time. They always boil down to the same thing. It's a nature-nurture argument, which is all about, is there a God or isn't there? Do we just respond to our nature, or are we, now look this word up if you're interested, teleological, which is associated with Mesoamerica and the early tribes before the Aztecs came in. These were individuals who were focused on the future. They were focused on I can't fully explain. I know teleology is what I know, and not that well. I know the word, and as opposed to mechanistic. All right, so teleological is that is the study of tele, or this force, a force that pulls us into the future. Survival. What is that force? Life force is what it's called sometimes now by Freud. Same thing. Darwin called it survival of the fittest. What is that life force? We're studying it. Some people say it's God. Some people say it's spirituality. The word is teleology. And you could, that's how I pronounce it. Some people pronounce it differently. T-E-L-E, right? Teleo is the word. And it is suggested that there is a root word. The words are connected in their words, which is why we do not want to pull those words apart from their meaning. We need to understand that these words have roots, is what they have. They have etymology. They have roots, and we need to understand the roots because those roots tell us something about culture, about our nature, about what is nurtured and changed and learned. All right. So that term, Paleo, is associated with Mesoamerica, associated with the first tribes that were there in that area prior to the Aztecs. The Aztecs basically wiped them out and started with their cannibalism. Is that the lost tribe of the Bible, which is Benjamin? That's what we were talking about in the Bookless classroom for middle school kids. Is that why? Because that's what somebody that in Lewis and Clark, that's what they thought that they were coming upon. The lost, I think it was in Lewis and Clark, the lost tribe of Israel, the lost tribe from the Bible. That would have been the tribe of Benjamin. I don't think there's any tribe that begins with a T. So, and from memory, and again, corrections on Friday, from memory, the lost tribe is the tribe of Benjamin, is what it is. And see how we could put our minds together to figure this kind of thing out and really put history together. Put history together. Yeah. Instead of losing history and the word and stupid words that like that Politico, whatever the heck that was. Political ideology. I don't know why I couldn't remember that. Okay, so groups, we've got groups here, right? And we are talking about we create psychological groups immediately. When we don't have a reason to define one group from another, we will do it. That's innate. But there are certain groupings that come on board for survival faster than other groupings. Race, we've said, does come on board, but race actually comes on board at about 5 or 6 years of age. It's when it comes on board, okay? So our concepts of race. So we had 5 years of conditioning, of learning. Those two words are interchangeable. In science, we call learning conditioning. So we had 5 years, 4 or 5 years of learning something from our, angelic parents, from our racist parents, from our religious parents, whatever those parents were, right? Or grandparents or whatever, we already had 5 years, 4 or 5 years of conditioning by the time we start seeing concepts of race actually solidly in place by 5 years, 5 or 6 years of age, solidly in place. Okay? Depending likely on the times where one is stressed more than the other, right? Maybe class was stressed, more in the 1500s than it is today. I don't know. I wasn't there. So there is this, and I use the word innate, part of our biology. Somewhere in our biology, early in our biology, it is written that we see people, things in groups. It's how when we look at the clouds and we land on our back, if anyone ever does that anymore, although I got a worm in my hair when that's the last time I laid on the ground looking at the sky, honest to God. I do it in the sand, of course, but never on the ground anymore when I got that worm in my, like literally. So somebody had to do this, like to get it out of my hair and like destroyed the worm. That's how, because it was so intertwined in my hair. It was so horrible. See? Oh my gosh. I didn't even forget what I was talking about, but oh my gosh. Woo! See why we can't go down rabbit trails? Oh, they take us to ugly places sometimes. Laying on my back, when we lay on our back, what do we do with the clouds? We make things that we understand out of them. We might do that for enjoyment, right? We might do it for enjoyment, but we will do it for survival just like that, wouldn't we? Oh my gosh, what is that ahead? What is that ahead of me? I don't know. I better identify it. Is that a in cognitive psychology, we have a log, but you can't identify it. You don't know it. It's way over there. So what do? Your mind starts grouping, 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 grouping. So we need to know that this is a very natural mechanism, and nobody has a right to destroy this natural mechanism. Nobody has a right environmentally to destroy or say it's an unimportant mechanism. It's a very important mechanism to see gender. It's a very important mechanism to see age and understand age. Those are two early mechanisms that are on board right away. Obviously, it's very important for us to identify with our mother, and in particular, our mother's scent, right? In particular, the scent of our mom, which we can only get when we're up close to our mom. And I started talking about the natural behavior of, we call it rooting behavior. So at 2 and 3 months of age, we see infants who engage in what is called rooting behavior. And rooting behavior is where an infant nuzzles but an infant doesn't nuzzle a mother's neck because they want to cuddle, because they're showing love. No, they nuzzle the mother's neck in order to get to what they smell, which is the breast milk. So producing milk is important for the child to understand and, in psychological terms, attach to their mother, the person who has the breast milk. This is an important attachment for psychological attachment later on, to fulfill psychological needs. Now, I'm going to talk about psychological needs somewhere down the road, but what I'll be talking about is Eric, holy smokes, what's his name? All of a sudden it escapes me. How could that be? Because I keep thinking of Eric Fromm over here. And it's not. I have said this name a million times. The pyramid. And this is a psychosocial pyramid. I'll think of it. I'll get to it. All right. So there's another 45-minute introduction for an hour class. Whoop, whoop. Okay. So very naturally breaking things off into groups. And when so this is what I was going to say. Eric Erickson. Oh my gosh, there it is. I was not going to get past not knowing it, because it's important for us to know the very first stage. So eventually I'll get to this in one of our classes, but the very first stage that comes on board is trust versus mistrust. It is, according to Erickson, a conflict. He calls it a conflict is what he does. So trust versus mistrust is the conflict that infants experience and have to successfully overcome. Successful means they become trusting. Who could they possibly need to trust? The mother. Who's the mother? The one with the breast milk. Wow. Who's the mom that they have to trust? The one with the breast milk. There's also studies that were done with Harry Harlow, and whether or not the breast milk was most important, or does the trust come from the mother herself, right? I don't know if they did surrogate mothers in that. I'm sure somewhere down the line they did, which means did they not their natural mother, right? So was it okay to be cuddled? Because that's what they needed. Yeah. Yes, they demonstrated that with the Romanian children, duh. Yeah, so you could have somebody who cuddles, and that was more important for outcome. That there could be, of course, there could be an absent mother and still have normal development, but there could not be an absence of peers and have normal development. Now think about that philosophically in this COVID environment and the psychological studies that we've got going on. Isolation, epidemics of loneliness, right? If we've got this kind of thing, then we are promoting an inability to attach. Who is most important to attach to? Our peers. For what? For what? For procreation. So we start with our peers who are, for procreation, same sex. Then we move on for procreation to have relationships. Our peers become opposite sex, right? For the family, for procreation. So what couldn't those monkeys live without? Because the study was done on monkeys, rhesus monkeys, Harry Harlow's monkeys. What couldn't they live without? They couldn't live without their peers, is what they couldn't live without. So back to nationalism and back to these concepts of group and essentialism and entitativity. Entitativity is we form groups, and that this group typically has an essence. These groups can be psychological groups, they can be physical groups, but they have an essence so powerful, in fact, that somebody would climb the Capitol building. Climb the Capitol building. And I don't know. I just don't know how much of all this is an experiment. That's what I don't know. Some of you are so mad because you can see the experiment and there's nothing that you can do about it because your side is doing the same experimental testing. As I've said, more than one time I've said. So it makes people so mad they'll climb the Capitol building because they know something that other people don't know. And this is the spiritual philosophical question for everybody. Really is, you can't know everything or you would be God. So what God did for you is he gave you a certain amount of information, but that certain amount of information truly is dangerous. Some of you ran with that information and you did horrible things with that in the name of that information. But you did not have all the information because none of us have all the information. In every single situation, none of us ever have all the information. So as I've said many times, the only thing that we can do is treat one another like human beings, right? With dignity, because the sun rises and sets on the good as well as the evil. And since we can't read one another's hearts, we don't know who's standing in front of us, right? But some of you had some information and you were willing to bet everything on the information that you had. You were willing to bet everything on the information that you had. And some of you had information that made you lose your faith, right? And I think that has to be hell to have that information. I am so thankful that I didn't have some of the information that some of you had, because I surely would have lost my faith, or my faith would have been challenged in ways that I may not have recovered from. So I am thankful that God gives me the information that I'm supposed to have, and only that information, because it comes out in his timing. So people who do searches for, endless information, God is not going to give you any more information than he wants you to have. So you can go about your journey to fulfill the business that he has for you, or you can continue playing this game of, I know more than you know. You probably do. I know just as much as I should know right now. And that I am so happy with. I'm so happy I know just as much as I'm supposed to know right now. Okay, let's see if we can't get something else done besides an intro. We did talk about nature versus nurture. Okay, so tactics used in groups. So what this helps tell us with these tactics is how much is a natural tendency for us. What's a natural tendency for us to do? A natural tendency is to make requests, but a natural tendency is not for us to abuse or harass or threaten one another. That's not a natural tendency. That's a learned tendency, and that's what that slide is about. Now let's take a look at this. Before I take a look at this, I want to run back to another slide back here, which is the slide on Oh, shoot. I'm not sure. Yeah, I took it out. You know what? We're going to get to it anyway. Oh, never mind. I wasn't reading the slide. Sorry. Okay. What I wanted to get back here to was here we have, I was looking at Ash's line study, but I wasn't looking at the title there, which is, I want a reminder here before we go to the next slide that we're going to talk about, which is the slide on reward and punishment. I want to go back and remember and think about what are you geared towards when you are feeling accepted, when you feel good about yourself. Is that because other people feel good about you? Public acceptance, right? That you're getting a lot of likes, that people are responding, right? Or that you have a lot. I cannot possibly be doing this based on the number of people that I get here in this classroom. Otherwise, I would never do it. I cannot possibly be doing this classroom when there's only 17 people who might come to a classroom. And I'm very excited about those 17 people who come to my classroom. I'm very excited about that. But if I were geared towards public acceptance, I would never do this, right? I could never do this because that's not, especially relative to numbers, that's not a lot of public acceptance. So that's a great way to think about that. Are you geared towards social media and what social media has to say? That is a it's a comparison. I'm not getting the right word though right now in my head, but that's okay. It doesn't even matter. Again, we are comparing ourselves. Are you comparing yourself to other people? Or are you comparing yourself actually to yourself? And we've talked about mastery, and we've talked about mastery mainly in our critical thinking. We've talked about mastery. So when you master something, that actually is more concerned with private acceptance. All right? So get that concept, however way you want to get it in your head, whatever example that helps you understand private acceptance versus public acceptance and what you have a tendency to be geared more towards. All right? It matters, but you have to know why it matters. You have to know sort of the mechanism by which it matters. Public versus private acceptance. So let's take a look at that now, and that has to do with the rewards. All right? Okay, so here the slide, the power of reward and punishment. So let's take a look at the two different groups here then, where we have two different behaviors and then or mental behaviors in this case, and then two different outcomes. All right, so when we're looking at this, in order for us to be able to make full use of this concept, this is one concept, but we can generalize this concept to many different things, and it will really, really help us understand our outcomes because we want rewards. So understanding this will really help our outcomes, right? So what we have here is we have the outcomes, and that is all. So that's what we're focused on, right? We're focused, whatever the outcome is that you want, it doesn't really matter. Right now we're talking about the outcomes for reward and punishment because what we want is for behaviors, we want long-term change for behaviors, right? When we are talking about philosophical behaviors of groupthink is based on public acceptance. Public acceptance is a temporary change. I really don't feel it inside my heart. That's a temporary change. So this is how we're tying this into when you think about how you are motivated, what motivates you to behave. We're talking about motivation of public acceptance or private acceptance. It basically amounts to whether or not we're going to see only a temporary change or a lasting change. One of the things about the nationalists, right, that are climbing on our Congress building, right, on January 6th is that they believed something inside of their hearts. That was a private belief, right? And they may say to everyone out here, I won't ever do that again. Doesn't make any sense to do that again. No, I have reformed. I see the error of my ways. That may be for public acceptance because we truly saw their private beliefs. But what we're looking for is a long-lasting change in somebody's belief system, right? I want you to have love for this nation, but not in a way that makes you exclude, or what was the other word that we saw here, if you remember? Exclude or to the detriment of others, right? I love this country, but I can't love it to the exclusion or detriment of other people. So I want you to be a nationalist, but not by definition, because by definition it is excluding people and it is to the detriment. I want you to love your country, but not above the individual, not above the individual rights, not above the Constitution, which is what our laws and judges are supposed to be supporting, right? The Constitution. Okay, all right. I'm gonna come back here to the. All right, no, I want one more thought on this. So what we're looking for, no matter what, is we're looking for lasting change, right? It's not that I want you to give up your deep beliefs. That's who you are. I just want you to also see that maybe your deep beliefs are just like we were talking about the settlers. Maybe you're, the first colonist. Maybe your deep beliefs are to the exclusion or detriment of another group. And despite your claims for human dignity and the Constitution and standing up for the Constitution, are you, as Morgan was questioning, every hour of every day diminishing, right, other people's rights in the name of the Constitution, right? So the last thing I wanted to talk about here is, so we need to know the elements that get us to behavior change, lasting change. So this is an example, but the elements are antecedents. So to the left, we have the orange boxes. Those are antecedents. They precede, they come before. Antecedents means it comes before. They come before the blue boxes, which are the behaviors. So this is, and then the green boxes, as we said, are the consequences. So this is an element to behavior change. These are the elements that we have to concentrate on. If we want behavior change, we have to concentrate on what comes before the behaviors. We have to concentrate on the behaviors, and we have to concentrate on whether or not we got the desired outcome. So for behavior change, as a psychologist, when we're studying behavior, we look at antecedents, what came before the behavior. We study that, all the things that came before the behavior. We study all the things that describe the behavior. And then we look at all the consequences. We describe the consequences of the behaviors. And then we could see how we could change those boxes to get different outcomes. Okay? All right, this is Dr. Annette Feravich, and I'm with Healthy Mind, Body, Spirit, as many of you know. It doesn't matter. I'm not even going to put it up there. And this is the philosophical classroom. I am the teacher, and this is the classroom, and thanks for joining me. I want to tell you we are going to be starting a new book in the reading room in 2 days. So on Thursday, we're going to start a new book for the reading room, and it is The Magnificent Mummy Maker. I decided that is going to be our new book, and I just want to get people excited for it. And it is by Elvira Woodruff. I haven't read this book. I was picking out quite a few different books that were, or looking at quite a few different books. I like this to be a, there's a goosebump ad. I like this to be right about middle school age. I might have something that's a little bit more adult but I really do like our reading room. And as you know, I read a lot of books for you guys because I think that it is a very nurturing thing for somebody to do, is to read to you. And there's all kinds of information. And as I said, in reading, what we are getting is we are getting not only searching for our perspective only when we search on the internet, but we actually literally are getting other perspectives, many other perspectives, maybe as well as our own, right? Many other perspectives, maybe as well as our own, right? On these kinds of things that we read, so that we're not just reading only our opinion. All right, thanks for joining me. If you join me live, thanks for joining me later on. Put your comments. I'm going to start looking for, hopefully soon, I will start looking for comments. And maybe I will start doing some comments or corrections when you add your, here we go. Comments or corrections when you add your comments or things, I'll correct them. When you do your deep dives, right? When you do your deep dives or your investigations, remember, I don't like to call them, when you go down your rabbit holes, I don't like to call it rabbit holes, but I do like to say a deep dive or an investigation. And there's my email address, Dr. Feravich, F as in Frank, ERA, V as in Victor, ICH, at healthymindbodyspirit.net. Okay, I will be back here in 11 minutes for our reading room, where we will finish. We have 2 chapters in our reading room on the Reptile Room, is what the book is called, from A Series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. Almost done with that book. All right, thanks. That's it. The end.